Hi there, this is Chris from MoneyHub, and this video is looking at the Mindful Money tool, which is an ethical lens on KiwiSaver funds as well as managed funds. So this is a New Zealand company that goes through every fund you can buy and looks at how ethical the investments are. Let's just use this now. What we're going to do is we click on Check Funds and we go into KiwiSaver funds, and then we type in a fund which we want to analyze. So I would go, for my example, the booster, one of the booster funds. This fund's been going around, it's been in operation since about 2010, so it's an old ethical fund. And we get a snapshot here. We scroll down, we see that it's 13.93% is the returns for the last 3 years. And we see the fees, which is the management fee, is 1.37%. This excludes the membership fee, which a lot of KiwiSaver funds schemes charge. And so this is just an overall view of the management fee. And then we've got this section, which is the areas of concern. Now, this is looking at, it says 5.8% for the booster fund that's exposed to animal testing. That's not to say that 5.8% of your money goes into companies which specialize in animal testing. It's just that some of the investments which the fund managers make, so i.e. some of the companies they buy into, be it like PepsiCo or some like say Lancome, L'Oreal, one of the pharmaceutical companies, they may use animal testing, and that's why it's flagged here. So anyway, let's go on clicking the view the fund details, because that's just an easier way to see it. Now you do get, first of all, this very confronting, bad list. So these are the ones involved in animal testing. For me, I wouldn't click on that first. I'd get a general idea about the fund. So this is just coming from the product disclosure for this fund from Booster, and then you get a value of it. There's about $200 million invested. That's how many members there are. That's the fee, and you can see the monthly fee is about $3, which makes it $36 per year. So we just get an overview there, and then there's the people, and then you can get, their PDS there. You can get a whole bunch of documents, and then also the portfolio holdings. That's quite useful. So you can see there right now where all their money is, so where all the fund's money is invested, and so it's very diversified. So the biggest investment is that 3.91% of that $200 million of the value is going into this Vanguard fund. And then the fund managers have also bought directly some Fisher & Paykel healthcare shares, some Microsoft shares, some shares in the A2 milk company, and a whole bunch of other things. There's Meridian Energy, Salesforce, an American company, right down to much smaller holdings, but still significant if you look at the size of the fund. And they've also got some term deposits with the bank, a variety of things which they think meet their ethical standards. And that's the summary of that fund's holdings. So if we go back and we click on further tabs, so this is the most ethical standard summary. So it's looking at, right, what does this fund say for these different sort of issues of concern? So have they said anything about alcohol? It says that yes, they have. So their holdings would be zero. But in the case of animal testing, it says, oh, we don't have anything, on animal testing. So they've invested 5.8%. This is kind of subjective because, I don't think PepsiCo, for example, specializes in animal testing, but in section, we can see that the booster fund does make a comment about fossil fuels, and they have 0% holding. The same with GMOs, but for gambling, they've made a comment, but they also have a small holding of companies which have something to do with gambling. So we can see those later on that first tab. With the human rights, they haven't made a comment on that, but they've got a 0% holding. Palm oil, they've not made a comment, but they've got 0%. Same with, and then for tobacco and weapons, they've made a comment and they've got a 0% holding. So that's the summary of their exclusions. And then the past returns tab is really just showing you per year what did the fund do. And in this case, we can see that it did like an annual return of of 11.8%. The average, I don't know if that was the market average for growth funds. It says a market average, but we don't really know. This is market average for the same risk category. So it probably is, I'm going to assume that is for all growth funds, although that does seem quite high. But that is because certainly the market growth fund average for 2021 so far is not 35%. But we can see that Boosters Fund did return 30.79%. So I wouldn't probably be too sure about this market average, but at least we can see. That's the problem with market averages, is that it's like, well, is this a growth fund that specializes in ethical, or is it a whole growth fund that's index based, or is it a growth fund average that's actively managed? So I don't tend to look at those two myself, but I do find them quite useful in terms of, if it is comparable, but in this case, I'm not sure. So the top investments, you can see then that they had Microsoft, Fisher & Paykel, the Vanguard. I assume this is the same data. It's coming from the same data as that document, but I see for Microsoft 3.34%. And then if I go to about the fund and I go into the portfolio holdings, then I get a Microsoft as 3.35%, but then I see Fisher & Paykel as 3.42%. A lot of percentages here, and I'm not seeing that number here. I'm seeing Fisher & Paykel as 3.05%. But look, it is what it is. I don't know how much data you want from it. You can always use the sorted tool as well, or download it from the fund manager's website, because they disclose it there as well. So for the fund updates, which come every quarter. So yeah, this is just a top 10 summary holding of the documents, and then you can see the investment mix. So we're looking at, so international equities is 54%, and I'm going to assume, okay, so Australasian is 34, the listed properties. So that's the target, but then you can see the actual is that they've gone quite big on international equities with it, so 5% above what they targeted, and they've got a bit more cash than they expected or than they targeted, maybe just looking for future opportunities. So that's really where the tool stops, but you can also look at, so now we come back to companies of concern, and this is your gambling. So if we look up the gaming and leisure properties, I mean, by right, you would think that is a real estate company. It specializes in casino properties. So that would be gambling, I would safely say. And then you can see the VC properties, and that's also looking at casino. I find so much out from Wikipedia or just doing a search of the name. Whereas the animal testing ones, so Procter & Gamble, that's everyday. PepsiCo, L'Oreal, so Danone, that's the owner, it's a drink maker. So yeah, you have to just look at these independently and think, well, is this too much exposure to say animal testing for me? So personally, I would think these aren't a specific animal testing companies, but it just depends what your risk or what your tolerance for that is. So it's a very good tool for just explaining